Welcome back everybody to the Wandering Samurai Study, in which we review and analyze every single act told in Rurouni Kenshin, and today's act is Act 20, A Reason to Act. Overall, this act, I think, was a very good teaser of the final conclusion to come. This is kind of like the middle, the beginning of the middle, maybe. We had this whole thing with Sanosuke being on edge with Megumi all the way up until now, and even in this act, he was continuing to be on edge with her. Probably the most prominent that he actually has been, now knowing Megumi's story. It just, by the end of the act, he has completely changed his way of thinking, and of course it has to do with Kenshin. So without further ado, we'll do the chapter summary. It's been about a week since the last incident with the Oniwaban. The group welcomes Megumi into the family, especially since her cooking is leagues ahead of Kaoru's. Sanosuke is the only one who isn't so welcoming to Megumi, refusing to eat her food and calling her opium woman. Hanya appears to take her to talk with Kanryu, who's nearby. And Kanryu threatens Megumi to leave on her own accord and return to him as to avoid the wrath of Potosai. If she doesn't comply, then he'd set fire to the dojo using his private army, the Oniwaban, and some Yakuza. Megumi leaves behind a letter on her way to Kanryu's, and Kenshin sees through it. Although reluctant at first, Sanosuke agrees to go alongside Kenshin and Yahiko to get Megumi back. Oh yes, Yahiko is going to be actually a part of this conflict for once, since he missed out on the Jine stuff and he really didn't do anything in the Sanosuke introduction story, and yay. But his reason enough, his motivation for wanting to get Megumi back to be a part of the action is a solid enough reason. She saved his life, so he at least owes her that much. And it got me kind of thinking about things in general between Yahiko and Megumi, as they don't really have a dynamic to speak of. They are obviously on the same side, but, kind of just thinking ahead, I don't really recall any moment that Yahiko and Megumi really get to spend any time together, or to kind of banter off one another or play off of one another. He really just goes in just to kind of return the favor after she saved his life, and now he's going to save her life. But it's not by any means a jumping off point for them. I don't know, a little bit interesting. But speaking of Megumi, we will talk a little bit about how she opened up in this act. She continues to be the fox woman. She continues to be very playful, very sneaky, very flirtatious with Kenshin, knowing that it will purposely aggravate Kaoru. Good stuff. I kind of like this little thing where Kaoru is kind of like the butt of the joke. I love her. I think she has some great moments, and her being so protective and possessive of Kenshin is hilarious, even when Kenshin is going and outright insulting her cooking. I love the panel here where Megumi is saying something like, anybody can make this, and Kenshin goes, that's not true. It just shows, though, that Watsuki kind of has an idea of how this character is, despite her initial behavior being a little bit standoffish because, she was ready to dip at the first opportunity that she had. She had one foot in the door, one foot out. And now that she doesn't necessarily need to, at least in the start of the chapter, you can see a much more relaxed side of her, and she still is that character. It's just in a different approach now that the circumstances are a little bit different and she's been welcomed into the family. But with all of that said, it is shortly lived as Hanya makes his return, disguised as a local of all things. And if nobody else was around, nobody was there to be like, hey, that guy isn't normally here. But she fell for it, and I think as the readers not knowing who Hanya is yet, or not knowing the dojo or the dichotomy of the manga, the world of who comes in and who's a regular, who isn't, this is actually a very good bait and switch for newcomers. He shows up as this local, and he has a purposeful reason for being there. And because nobody else is there, nobody else can really point him out as being suspicious, he is able to kind of enter, and that's pretty cool. It's just, we get to see the Oniwaban being shinobis and ninjas and masters of disguise and information and such, spies. Why was I forgetting that word? But I don't know, it's just really, really cool. We get to see spies doing spy things. We got to see Jine doing hitokiri things. That's really cool. I like that we get to see this stuff. But anyway, so Megumi and Kanryu, they're talking. So suddenly Kanryu has lost his patience with Megumi. I don't really understand it. Why all of a sudden he's like, well, you know what? If you're not going to return, I'll just kill you. So then what next? I don't understand. Like, is it just a really high level bluff? Like, what if she just didn't return? But, as far as, like, villains go, the Oniwaban and Kanryu are really good at being villainous. His threat of using his private army, the Oniwaban and the Yakuza, sending an entire force of people, various factions, to attack one dojo for this one person is really crazy. So even if he wasn't bluffing, if he really intended to set fire to the dojo, wow. Maybe that's why Megumi wasn't even willing to dance around the idea of him actually doing, or willing to call his bluff. She just, okay, she'll do it. And so when she leaves her letter and Kenshin immediately sees through it, it's just another example of Kenshin just being a seasoned fighter, being somebody who's been around the block and has been around Japan and knows what the geography or the politics or the culture of Japan is in that moment. For her to write that she's returning to her home in Aizu, and Kenshin saying, well, there's nobody to go home to. It is rough. It is just so telling, though, of Kenshin just, being his age in a sense, but also just being way wiser than everybody else. He really is from a different world than the characters that he's finding himself reciting with. Kenshin being from the world before the Bakumatsu, and everyone else being born during the Bakumatsu and the stuff that followed afterwards. But on the note of nobody home to return to in Aizu, when Kanryu tells Megumi that what would her family think knowing that she was creating opium and the shame that she's brought on them, it really, really hurts. It really strikes a nerve with her. The opium woman comment from Sanosuke already did it as it was, and for Kanryu to kind of hit the nail with the hammer just a little bit deeper, it would make sense for Megumi, though, to not really put up a fight with him. She's very lonely. She's very, I guess, kind of isolated or desperate in her situation, that she doesn't have the confidence to fight back. She doesn't have the secureness that you would feel when being welcomed into the family, or knowing that a family has your back. Like, she feels like she's almost a burden to the Kamiya Dojo and the residents in there, as, she brought the Oniwaban knocking on her door as well as Kanryu. And so the least she can do is leave and dissolve them of their issues. And of course she doesn't have that security because Sanosuke has been kind of a jerk to her. And of course it makes sense for Sanosuke to be angry. He's kind of establishing himself as being different from Kenshin. He continues to say that Kenshin is soft for people. He is not soft like him. But Kenshin knocks him or checks him and tells him, yeah, but you being like this is not befitting of you. It's not a good look for you, and your attitude is crap. So, knock it off, because Megumi is in the same situation that you were when he met him. And that's really what Kenshin is saying when he says that he has a reason to act to protect Megumi, because she is in the similar situation as everybody else before her. It's the same reason that he protected Kaoru. It's the same reason he protected Yahiko, and it's the same reason that he protected Sanosuke. And Sanosuke realizes this, and this is the reason that he changes his tune. And I'm excited to see where the story goes from here. We are getting to the conclusion soon enough anyways. But for now, if you like this act, then consider subscribing to the channel and share it out to anybody else who might enjoy this video series that we're doing on the Rurouni Kenshin manga. I am really happy with how things are going, and I'm very optimistic about the future. Let's continue to wander on forward. Bye, cha.